Hi there and welcome to Plant CEO. In today's episode, I'd like to welcome Jackie Norman and Gareth Scurr from Vegan FTA. Hey, both of you, how are you doing?
Oh, good, thanks.
Very
Thank
well.
you so much for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Great to have you on the show. And you're joining us from New Zealand in Auckland at the moment.
Yeah, that's right. Winter here. So I hope you guys are enjoying the sunshine over there.
Yeah, we had a nice spell for a few weeks, but now it's back to nice London rain, put it that way.
Some things never change. Yeah. It feels like I've never been away.
So how did an English lady and a Welsh man end up in New Zealand?
Oh, well, it's kind of funny. I emigrated out with my family, and Jackie, you came over here. Well, you chased the barman out here originally.
I was really classy. Yeah, I was a teenager and ran off with the barman from he was a Kiwi barman from my local pub, and somehow I never quite made it back again.
But we both ended up in the same town, Whangamata, around the same time when Jackie moved there, and I emigrated straight there. And yeah, we're in town for a few years. We sort of knew about each other, you know, as you do in small towns. And I was working at the local hardware store, Bunnings, which is kind of like B&Q in the UK, right, and selling timber and stuff like that. And then it went a long way for a Welsh bloke to meet an English girl, but I sold her some parsley, and yeah, the story goes from there pretty much.
Yeah, by the time we actually went out for a date, you know, I had a rockery and all kinds of things. My garden never looked so good. So I guess it was a vegan union waiting to happen, really, you know, all the plants and everything I was buying.
Yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, can we start by telling me what Vegan FTA is and how you both got involved in it?
So Vegan FTA is a global non-profit organization, and it stands for Vegan for the Animals, FTA. And so Jackie, you were the one who originally got involved with it by volunteering.
Yeah. I volunteered for a while. I really fell into it. I've been a writer, freelancer. Something I've always done. You know, I had a wonderful teacher growing up in the UK, and she was one of these people that said, "My dear, you simply must write," you know. So that's what I always did. I was like, oh, okay then. So I've always written both in the UK and over here. And it was something that I actually had a health scare, quite a significant one for a long time. Gareth and I, once we got together, after a while, we decided that we were fed up of living in suburbia and we wanted to live on the road. And so we sold everything up and bought this little we call it a camper van, but it wasn't really a camper van. Think of it more as like a builder's type tradie van, wasn't it? Yeah, you know, 4.6 meters long, 1.6 meter. There was no shower or any of these nice things that a lot of the motorhomes have. So yeah, we were supposed to be living the dream, living on the road. And yeah, it wasn't long after that. We'd only really just set off, and I had started to experience some pain, very unexplained pain, very kind of different. And so yeah, by the time I actually discovered Vegan FTA, to cut a long story short, at this stage, it was I'd been bedridden for 7 months, and which was great fun in a van, you can imagine. You know? Yeah. And here we were in -4 degree temperatures, weren't we? But I was still writing, and at the time I was a travel writer as well. And obviously I wasn't able to do much traveling when I'd been bedbound for 7 months. But one thing I could do was use the internet. And so I was just on Facebook, I think, and I came across this little wee pig icon, I think, with like our page on it, and said that there was a page called Vegan FTA that were looking for volunteers, looking for writers specifically. And I thought, oh, that's something I could do. And at this stage, they had 140,000 followers. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty good, you know, why have I not heard of these people before? So I put my hand up and volunteered and started writing. You know, there was, after a few years in New Zealand, there was a lot that I'd learned that I could write about, you know, particularly the animal agriculture industry. And so that was what I started writing about, using my personal experience of how I perceive things over here. And for me, it was kind of a safe platform because I wasn't very brave about speaking out in a country where agriculture is so strong. So I thought, this is a nice, safe platform. I'm living in a van. Nobody knows who I am. and I can write safely, you know, and I've got a really good platform to get my experiences out there. And so, yeah, it just grew from there, really. I became part of the team on a volunteer basis. And after about a year, our founder said, you know, I'm looking for a filmmaker, a photographer. Do you know anyone that might fit that bill? And funnily enough, you know, I was married to one, living in very close proximity. And yeah, Gareth was a travel filmmaker and photographer by then. And so I said, well, yeah, I know someone that might fit the bill.
Yeah, so I jumped on board, and then, well, since then we've got up to 500,000 followers across our platforms, and it's really become a hub for two things, really: getting vegans to be more active within the movement, because if we're vegan and we're doing nothing for the animals, apart from just our own habits, you know, some of us believe that is not quite enough, but then we're also trying to get more non-vegans to entertain the idea and also come on board. And so we try to keep it a very sort of positive platform and bridge that divide between non-vegans and vegans, because we need everyone on side. You know, we're going to make this planet a better place together. You know, it's all about collaboration. And that's something that's just, it's been sort of our mantra for the last sort of year or so, is just collaboration, 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 because when we work together, great things happen. And like with the two of us, Jackie being a writer and me being a filmmaker, it's one of those things that when you're together, you can make some brilliant stuff. And so originally that was with the travel magazine. You're writing my films, and then now it's with veganism, and yeah, couldn't be happier doing this great work for the animals.
Definitely. I think when we should probably say, actually, you know, as Gareth said, we try our best to be a positive activism hub, in that we're not all happy, joy all the time, because we know that's not how the world is, you know, and this is why so many of us are vegan. And it's so important that, you know, we do embrace that whole way of life and that whole philosophy. But, you know, we found that when the world hit lockdown, that was where we really hit our niche, I suppose. That was when we really started ramping things up, because we noticed that there were activists around the world that all of a sudden their social networks had been cut off.
They couldn't get out doing the actions they're previously doing. And
they couldn't get out. They couldn't do the vigils, the protests. You know, they felt very cut off from other people. You know, a lot of people, their only, you know, people like them were the people that they would see at protests or vigils or vegan potlucks. And all of a sudden they couldn't do any of that. And they were feeling very helpless and not feeling that they were doing enough. And for us, you know, being bedbound as I was, we were completely unfazed, because we're like, we know, you know, we've been active all this time. We've been activists for a good while now. We know that you can do a lot without leaving your house and still be proactive for the cause and for the movement. And so that was how we really found our niche and decided that, you know, we would just focus on how many ways there are to be active, you know.
Show the full spectrum that you can, be advocating on. And, you know, whether you're at home, whether you're on the street, you know, there's always a way to be active for the animals. And so we try to showcase that in a positive way. And yeah, it's been fantastic. We have learned so much from so many great activists. We filmed our 39th episode of our activist series today, and every speaker has just blown us away, and we learned so much from them. And hopefully our audience has been learning so much from them too.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I really quite like the fact that you're enabling people to collaborate on this. And I think there are some activists, I guess, that don't like that level of collaboration, and they're speaking maybe badly of another activist. But we do need more people to come together, right? And it's great that you're sort of like a conduit in order to do that, right?
Yeah, we do a lot of our own content, don't we? We produce a lot of our own content, as Gareth said, but we also show there are so many things that people are already doing well. Animal Save Movement, for example, you know, they do fantastic content already that, you know, why should we try and emulate or try and copy what they're doing when they're already doing so well and just smashing it with the content and with the following and the reaction that they're getting. And so we would rather work together with someone like them and say, look, these are some guys to learn off, to, you know, they're just really doing things well. Would you say?
Yeah, but to follow on from Anant's point as well, in the fact that some people then might see the save movement and say, well, I don't think vigils are effective. And so what we try and do is whenever we're showcasing these things, try and show the depth to it, because there's certain forms of activism. When I first saw them, I was like, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? But the more I've had the opportunity to learn about it and why they do it, what the reasoning is behind that perspective, the more I can sort of say it might not still be my cup of tea, but I respect that, and I know that they're doing their work in their own way. And so it's something we try and tackle very regularly, is that bit of infighting that you get within this community, you know, of saying that so and so is doing it wrong. We try and be like, well, they're just doing it differently. They're doing it in their own way. And of course, there are a few, the odd time when someone is doing something just bizarre, but luckily that's not so often.
Yeah.
What would you say is quite effective at the moment in terms of, I guess, techniques, or what you've both seen, and you know, when you're out speaking to people, what sort of helps people realize this in a faster way?
I think one of the main methods is, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's one Socratic method. That is, it's been one that's been going for a long time, but getting people to have the gears turning in their own heads, as opposed getting them to question their own self, as opposed to attacking them so much. When we spoke to Emma Hurst this morning, the MP for the Animal Justice Party, she is a trained psychologist, and she was speaking about the whole cognitive dissonance. And that is something that comes up so frequently. That is what's happening when people often balk against the vegan argument, because they know a lot of this information, but they don't want to accept it. They don't want their actions to align with their morals almost. And so trying to rephrase things in a way that takes away that judgment is a brilliant way to sort of get around that, because as soon as you say you're doing it wrong, that person is then on the defense. And so it's finding interesting ways to work around that.
Yeah, we definitely prefer to inform and educate rather than preach at people. And another thing which I was really glad to see Emma say to us when we were speaking with her, and I thoroughly agree, we try and share personal anecdotes as much as possible. I think, you know, when you come from a place of experience, and just more authentic and more, I think people just listen to you when they can see that you're really the real deal. You know, you're speaking from the heart, you're speaking with passion, and you're speaking because, you know, you're not just spouting off something that you've read or seen. You know, it's great to have that information to call as well. But yeah, I think if the sincerity is there and the experience, I think that goes a long way as well.
Yeah, totally agree. And the reason that I did the show was actually for the animals. So I believe that people normally go vegan for three reasons. It's, you know, it's for the animals, like I did, for sustainability and climate change, and for personal health. So normally out of those three, and it tends to be a balance between some of those, and whichever one comes first. But for me, the reason of doing the show is actually for the animals. So not a lot of people know that.
Oh, well, thank you for doing that, and thank you for doing the show, because as we say, you know, this is a form of activism in itself, having this show, and that's the thing. Everyone's got to have their own passion project, and it's such a great way to get it out there and be the voice for the animals in different forms.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so let's talk about New Zealand. So President Ardern, she's done a really good job in terms of protecting people during the COVID-19 outbreak, making, you know, decisive actions, I would say early, that effectively saved a lot of lives. How are things in New Zealand? Jackie, you mentioned there in the beginning that it's, you know, it's very big on animal agriculture, especially with cattle and also with the dairy industry. Have things changed in New Zealand, and where is it at the moment in terms of policies as well?
It's interesting, actually, just going back, you know, I've been here, coming up 30 years now. And I think at the start, you know, people hear New Zealand and they think of sheep, you know, it's always New Zealand and sheep. Well, I read recently actually that the number of, in the last 10 years alone, the number of sheep in New Zealand has decreased by half, and yet the number of cattle, I think dairy cattle specifically, has tripled, and that's just in the last 10 to 30 years. So, so that gives you an idea of where we're at with agriculture. Yeah.
But yeah, it's Jacinda did a fantastic job in regards to the COVID state of things, and getting us locked down nice and early, which was, you know,
oh, definitely,
it was good getting us through that. But our agricultural system has still been, they're still saying that it's the backbone of the country, but things really need to change, because we have this so-called clean green image, but the only thing green about it is all the cow effluents in the river. That's the greenest part of it all. So yeah, it's just, I don't think policies have really been changing towards this. I think people are getting more open about the idea of veganism in their individual lives, but when it comes to policy, we have one MP out here, Chloe Schwarbeck. She's gone vegan, and it's been great. She's a young politician, and she's really making a name for herself, and she's getting out there with some of the green causes. But as I say, we spoke to Emma Hurst this morning, and she gave a really good insight into the Australian Parliament and how the way a lot of politicians work, and it's mainly about getting bums on seats. And for a country like ourselves, which is a animal agriculture, really intensive country, a large number of the voting power rests in those seats. And so when you're trying to bring up any issues about veganism or going against that animal ag, it means they're not going to get voted in potentially. And so a lot of people won't touch it. And so there's a lot of great organizations and advocates out here who are really trying to push our government to end things like the live export, which they're ending it in, I believe, 2 years. 2023. So they're still going to carry on for another 2 years, send them on these terrible death ships. They're just
7,000 head of cattle at a time.
Where are they shipping to?
China.
To China.
Yeah, they've been shipping to China, and they were able to get away with it originally because they put them underneath a breeding program to take them over there. And so there was a loophole to go with that. And there was also the sinking of the ship last year, I believe it was.
Yes, yeah, it was.
And so I can't remember, 70,000 was it?
7,500.
Oh, 7,500 cows were on that ship, and it sank. And I think 40 crew as well were on there. To me, the cows is the main thing that I noticed.
It was all about the people. We were in Napier at that time, and we could see the port out of our window, which was quite confronting.
But yeah, so basically New Zealand at the political level is still trying to rely on the animal agriculture industry, but there are more voices coming up now, and I really hope we can keep on advocating and pushing for them to start changing and refarming, reforming this land to what it's good at doing. Like New Zealand, they say it's got the best lamb and beef, but that's because it's got the best grass. And if we can grow the best grass, I bet we can grow the best crops. So
absolutely,
don't have the cows, don't have the sheep, have the crops. It's just
definitely
one giant monoculture for the most part. Yeah,
I think one of the most frustrating things is for us, certainly the more that we've been working with Vegan FTA as well, and been talking to people like freshwater ecologists and scientists, is that the public is still conditioned into believing that yes, the dairy industry is the backbone of our country, and we're feeding the nation, and what would we do without it? But the thing is that the government spends more in subsidies propping up the dairy industry every year than what the entire dairy industry earns. And it's like, this is crazy. I spoke to my mum a while ago about it, and she's pushing 80, and she was really shocked and quite angry when she heard about that. She's not vegan, she's far as away as you can be, but the fact that this isn't public knowledge, and she just thought it was absolutely crazy. And I think that's one of the most rewarding things about what we do with Vegan FTA is, and as soon as I jumped on board as a volunteer through my writing and realized that we had a platform, people everywhere all around the world think that we are the world capital of animal agriculture. And as Gareth said, there are a lot of people working really hard over here trying to change that. and yeah, people have got this rose-tinted view of how our country owns and operates. We've got this wonderful prime minister with angel wings. Don't get me wrong, Jacinda is a lovely, lovely lady, and she has done a wonderful job for us in so many ways. You know, and we hear all the time from followers on Vegan FTA is, oh, New Zealand's so wonderful because you're the first country that, you know, officially recognized all beings as sentient. And it's like, it's just meaningless words. You know, we've seen so much excitement in the UK recently, you know, when the same thing has happened. And we thought, well, we really hope that you guys do it different and do it better than what we do over here, because yeah, one of the biggest, most important things to me, having this voice of Vegan FTA, is that getting it out there that we are still an inherently cruel country to our animals. Absolutely. It's just, I can't even put it into words, but you know, we are cruel to other species on a monumental, mind-blowing scale. And you know, that needs other countries around the world need to know that. And that's why I'm really glad of having this platform, so that we can get the word out there of really what happens over here, and hope that other countries don't make the same mistake, really.
Yeah. Do you think with innovations like cultured meat or cell-based meat will find its way pretty quickly to New Zealand? Are you aware of like startups that are sort of investing in that now? Because sometimes, you know, it might be hard to change people's diet immediately, but when they see that there's a cleaner meat, I guess, not that I would want to eat it, being, you know, vegetarian and vegan all my life, but other people may want to still consume that. Is that happening now? Are you seeing those companies sort of springing up, or is it mainly happening in Australia, where there's a lot of innovation in that area as well?
I think it is growing out here quite a lot. A lot of the, you know, even your small supermarket brands are starting to jump on the bandwagon, giving out their plant-based products and stuff. And so I think New Zealand will get onto it. It's just with such a heavy farming background, these guys, they dig in their heels hard, and I think it will take a while for them to really get rid of them. But, you know, like, it's great to see how many plant-based options are available. When we first went vegan, we were down in Gore in the South Island, and tofu was exotic down there. You know, you couldn't get anything other than that. But now wherever we go, there's more and more popping up. And so I think
it's changed a lot.
It is changing. It is changing. I think a lot of it is the health aspect and a lot down that sort of route, and potentially the environmental, not so much the animal welfare or ethics. But
we've got, you know, one of the highest, if not the highest rate of bowel cancer in the world. There are a lot of things that animal proteins point the finger at quite heavily.
Yeah, totally. Right. And you both became vegan, I think, in 2017, right? And Jackie, you also had experience working in the dairy industry, and you recently gave evidence in the Australian Parliament about the dairy industry. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, like we mentioned at the start, I ran off with the kiwi bum, and when I arrived over here, it was quite a spontaneous thing. You know, it was no one really expecting me to stick it out, and I had, you know, no such organized things as work permits and that kind of thing. But he was from a family of dairy farmers. He'd grown up learning to milk cows, and that was all he knew. So, you know, the first job that we went to, or the first place that I went to with him, was on a dairy farm. And because I didn't have a work permit, I couldn't work for money. But out of boredom, I kind of learned how to milk cows, and I was very proud of that at the time, because I was this little wee thing that, you know, I'd been nowhere, done nothing, and saying to my friends, "Oh wow, look at me now! I'm living the dream. I'm in this clean green pastures. There's peaceful cows everywhere, and I'm singing to them, and I'm milking them, and it's all just great." And I bet you never thought I'd be doing anything like this, and it was all very novel. But it actually took me 18 years to get out of the dairy industry, by which time, yeah, I'd learned an awful lot, and there really wasn't very much that I didn't know how to do on the farm. It's sort of I did a course in farm business management, and you know, at one stage I was able to walk into a field of grass and tell you how many kilograms of dry matter there was, which is, you know, what the cows convert into milk. Yeah, I was that conditioned and that entrenched in it. I could literally walk in and tell you that to the nearest kilo type thing. I could carve cows by myself. I should really explain, carving cows does not mean cutting them up. I'm sorry to be so graphic, but someone completely misunderstood me recently when I said that I could carve a cow. Sure. It meant I assisted in helping a cow give birth.
Right.
Yeah, you know, I did all the day-to-day running of the farm. And so, yeah, when I started writing for Vegan FTA, and I started speaking out, I was very, very shy because I was really terrified of the backlash from farmers. And so writing was a great platform for me. And then as time went by and I realized how important it was, and there were more people like the Earthling Eds that were standing up, and you know, I was sort of thinking, well, look how brave they are, you know, how fearless they are, and how people are listening to them, and they've got so much wisdom, they've got such a great way of communicating, and they haven't seen or had the years of experience in the animal ag industry that I have. You know, how can I just stand back and let them talk and me not do that? So I got braver and braver eventually, and yeah, started speaking out for places like Free From Harm, Switch for Good. Yeah, I did things for plant-based news, all sorts. And so, yeah, I think it was through, I can't even remember. It would have been through Katrina Fox, I believe. I joined the Vegan Women's Leadership Network, which she started a year ago, and she put me in touch with Emma Hurst. I actually did a talk for VegFest UK. That was how it came about, wasn't it? It was during lockdown, and they had the online Summerfest, and they wanted me to do a 45-minute presentation about my years in the industry and how to and how not to communicate with farmers, being someone that's been there. And it just kind of went from there, really. And the Parliament in New South Wales in Australia, they were doing an inquiry into long-term sustainability of the dairy industry. And basically, there weren't too many voices for the animals. There is, what was there? The Labor Party, the Greens, Animal Justice Party,
Hunting and Fishing Party.
Yeah, shooters, hunters, fishers, or shooters, fishers, farmers, something like that. You know, they're up against that, and there weren't too many voices saying, you know, why the dairy industry wasn't sustainable. And I think at the time I learned at the inquiry that in the last year alone, the number of dairy farms in the state had halved, which showed that it wasn't sustainable. But, you know, all the people were, all the dairy reps and the farmers were going to Parliament saying, we need help, we need money, we need subsidies. And so it was basically, I had the opportunity and was very privileged to stand there for an afternoon and sort of say, well, I can tell you what not to do, because this is what's happening in New Zealand. And you know, you've got 2/3 of our native fish species that are dying. This is what happens to cows and calves. You know, they get separated. And I think the best thing about it, apart from the fact, you know, that I was the last speaker of the day and I got to see all of these people come up to the MPs in the committee and saying, we need more money, prop us up, was to actually just blow them all out of the water and just say, you know, this is the reality of it. This is what's happening. This is what happens on the farm. This is what's happening in New Zealand. This is what's happening to our waterways. This is what's happening with our health statistics. And, you know, they couldn't pull the wool over my eyes, could they? All of these dairy reps, because they knew that I'd been there, I'd actually seen it and lived it and was telling the truth. And I think the best thing about it for me the next day was to get an email from one of the secretaries to say that one of the MPs that had sat in on that inquiry that day had gone home to his wife and was just blown away. And he said, I had no idea what happens, you know, to cows and calves. And that's the thing, people don't know. There are people there in their 60s and 70s, they still don't know what happens in the dairy industry because it's so hidden. I'd love to do it. I'd do it again anytime.
Yeah, you should try and go to the other states. I think in Australia, right, there's this, I feel there's a lot of differences between the states. Like, so, you know, New South Wales is very different to Victoria, for example, and their policies are completely different. Even if you're not talking about animal agriculture, you talk about electric cars, and you're talking about subsidies that are given, you know, in for switching out. They were totally different in each state. So yeah, I think you have to go round to each one probably and give a talk.
Oh, it's such a huge country, isn't it? We were talking to someone the other day from Perth, and we realized that, you know, their time difference was 2 hours later than what we thought it was. And it was because it was another 4 hours between, was it New South Wales and Perth or something like that? Yeah. I remember when I used to live in the UK, and, you know, the Canary Islands is 4 hours away, Greece is 3 hours away. So I think, yeah, we tend to underestimate just how huge a country Australia is.
Totally, yeah. And you mentioned about like educating people about what the industry, the dairy industry, is really like. We've previously spoken about what bobby calves are. Can you explain? Because I guess not a lot of people know what that term is.
Yeah, they don't, and that's one of the things that we try really hard to get out on our platform. Bobby calf, I guess it's getting more widely known, doesn't it? In the case of the poultry industry, that the male chicks when they're born, which are something like 50% of all chicks born are male, and they are macerated, you know, shortly after birth, because they're a waste product of that industry. That, you know, the industry's got no use or need for them. It's the same with bobby calves, most typically male, but of course it's a little bit different, because when a calf is born, I mean, we all know, or well, an increasing number of people are learning that to get milk from a cow, she has to give birth. You know, I mean, a lot of people still don't know that, but obviously that's what has to happen. But if a calf is born male into the dairy industry, you can only have so many bulls. You know, you can only breed from so many breeding animals, and so, you know, these male calves, which I guess are the same, there's as many bull calves as there are female calves, at least, they are surplus to requirement. You know, they don't make milk. All they do is eat grass which a female cow would turn into milk and in turn create profit. And so, you know, they are deemed waste, they're deemed useless. And so these, it's not like a chick where you can just pop them on a conveyor belt. You know, these calves are 20-25 kilos when they're born. And so what happens is that they are usually sent to slaughter at 4 days old. That's the rule anyway. The rule is supposed to be, they're supposed to be 4 days old before they are allowed to be put on the truck and sent to slaughter. And is it something like 1.2 million a year in New Zealand every year? I think it's something like 1.2 million 4-day-old calves are slaughtered. Calves which are essentially born to die, you know. That's what it boils down to. And it's a huge, vile industry. I learned a couple of years ago that I always wondered why they were called bobby calves, but because, you know, I think in years gone by, farmers used to get paid a bob for them, you know, because they weren't worth very much. So very, very predominantly male, but it can also be doing things like, you know, the wrong breeding sire, the wrong color, the wrong breed. You know, often Jersey calves, they don't thrive so well, you know, they're smaller breed, or they're not thought to have such steady temperaments as the your black and white Friesians that you see. So yeah, that's what they are. It is a huge industry, and because the demand for our dairy products is so great over here, you know, a lot of animals get bred. The same as with Gareth said. I mean, one of the reasons that, to go off on a tangent slightly, but as Gareth said, one of the reasons that live export, you know, the government says, yes, we'll ban it, but we can't ban it until 2023, because we have a massive amount of animals that are being bred to fill these ships, to fill the demand from overseas, and they are reaching $2,000 per animal for these farmers, you know. And so what's going to happen to all these animals that have been specifically deliberately bred? And so yeah, it's a lot of less than ideal situations, but that's what bobby calves boils down to. And that is, I think, one of the most cruel aspects I know of any industry, really. You know, they really are these innocent babies that are just born to die. And when I was on the farm, and I was responsible for raising, you know, 400 plus calves each year, you were taught from the start that you distance yourself from the bobby calves. You can't get attached to them the way that you do the other calves, because you know, they're just not going to be here for very long. So
yeah, that is
very, very sad.
That's very sad and very shocking that it's so high. And also some of that meat isn't being used by the veal industry, right? Some of it just is waste. Like they just get rid of it. It's just like, you know, it's terrible what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, even when I was a meat eater, I never saw vast aisles full of veal in our supermarkets. So yeah. It's as someone who can talk a lot, as you probably imagine, you know, as well as you can tell, it's just one of those things where words just fail me, how hideously cruel it is.
Because even if you think about the sinking of the ship with the 7,500 cows on, there's probably 7,500 cows which were born male, which were killed before even those ones got on the ship. So it's just the numbers is astronomical. And when you go driving in the countryside around New Zealand, when it's breeding season, you'll see piles by the gate ready for the trucks to pick up, and it's just a brutal industry. And I think a lot of that meat probably goes into the pet food, if anything. It's just
right.
It's just horrible.
Yeah. So thinking about, I guess, farm transition, there's a few organizations that are really trying to transition, say, dairy farmers to produce other things, maybe like oat milk, right? And I guess that will start to happen more when consumers start to purchase more of those products, right? But is anything like that happening, or is there any organizations that are trying to help transition farms to animal-free farms, basically?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's certainly, like you say, most of our plant-based products that we have, from milks to, you know, meat alternatives, they are pretty much largely imported, aren't they, at the moment? So, you know, we've got some great local ones, which are, you know, hugely supported by the vegan community. But yeah, we've still got a long way to go before we catch up with other countries. But even as Gareth said, you know, we were in Southland when we first went vegan, and there is an oat milk factory opening up there soon, which is going to be huge. And that's one of the problems that we've had when advocating, you know, even as an ex-farmer myself, is when you say to farmers, oh, but you need to be farming something else, you know, you can't be farming animals, it's not the future, you know. And they sort of look around and say, well, you tell me what can I grow here, you know, look at these hills, what can I grow on there? And as Gareth said, once upon a time, you know, our land grew a lot more than just grass. So we have to kind of go back and get a bit daring and experimenting with things. But yeah, I mean, there are certainly people that are working very hard to try and help farmers transition. And one of them, there's a group of us actually at the moment who we've been working in with the likes of Refarmed and Surge for the last few months to come up with a comprehensive resource. So, you know, we've been learning as much as we can for farmers in New Zealand, so we can actually answer those questions and say, right, which part of the country are you in? What kind of soil do you have? You know, these are some of the things that can be grown. I think it was Miyoko Shina was saying a while back, I heard her say that, you know, there is going to be a massive demand for pea protein. You know, people aren't growing enough peas fast enough, and you know, we'll get to a stage where everyone's crying out for peas and they just can't get enough. So, you know, that's something that we use here in the some of the products that are made here with the dairy-free cheeses and things as well. So yeah, it's encouraging farmers. What we need, we're trying to work on things like statistics, to give farmers encouragement, to show them that the demand really is there. you know, so we're sort of working with food manufacturers and that kind of thing, people that do the cheese alternatives,
Right.
and the plant milks over here, to sort of say, right, you know, what can we do to encourage, you know, we've shown them what they can grow, but we need to, yeah, you've got to let them know that it's worthwhile, because it's going to be a real leap of faith for them. You know, it's a scary thing. So yeah,
it's something we try and help our advocates and activists as well also learn up on, is trying to figure out, if you have those solutions, it means that when you go into those conversations, it's going to be a lot more beneficial for both of you, because you can both get away from learning from it. So yeah, there's some great organizations out there, and yeah, Refarmed has been doing fantastic work, and even our vegan society out here did the green protein report, and that spoke a lot about it. And
that was Yasmin Daboo.
Yasmin Daboo,
yeah,
so,
she was out here.
Yeah, it's about getting farmers to reconnect with the land that they have, because, you know, it's been taken over by the animals because they've let them on there, but it's time that they really reconnect with it. And yeah, there's joy to be had there, and we support farmers, just plant-based farmers. You know, we want them to get back happy and, you know, enjoying their land again, you know, not miserable milking at 5 a.m. You know, they should be happy. Everyone deserves to be happy, especially the animals.
Totally. So that's awesome. And yeah, just want to say thank you so much to both of you for doing what you're doing, putting all the content out there, getting people together, getting the messages out, you know, speaking in Parliament, which is also fantastic, and want to see more of that. And yeah, just encouraging more positivity between the activists, and also helping the animals, which is, you know, why we're doing this. So yeah, congrats as well.
Oh, thank you so much. We do what we can, but we still got to keep doing more. And yeah, every day we press on, and it's all FTA for the animals.
Yeah, awesome. So thanks again, both of you, for coming on the show, and yeah, hopefully speak to you again soon.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, take care. Bye. Bye.